Welcome to Mash the Gas Podcast. Mash the Gas Podcast. Your weekly breakdown of every NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, NASCAR Nation, to another episode of Mash the Gas. We are just about finished for the year, but tonight we are here to cover the Xfinity 500 NASCAR Cup Series at Martinsville Speedway. I'm Jeff Davis. Joining me right now is Mr. Kevin Batstone. Hey, Kevin, who mashed the gas this weekend?
Well, I'll tell you what, buddy, it's feeling like 2023 all over again. Never sleep on, Team Penske, Ryan Blaney. Those guys, they just find ways, man. When the pressure is on, they find ways. And we saw how exhausted he was when he got out of that race car. Started 14th, led 32 laps, led the one that counted the most, had to get around Chase Elliott, had to hold off Kyle Larson. Incredible job by the 12 team, Team Penske, locked into Phoenix, going for back-to-back titles.
Tell you what, Kevin, Ryan Blaney had a strong car all day long. He just crushed it. Thought he did a really damn good job. I had him on my roster, and I know you did as well. And rightfully so. I mean, Ryan Blaney, he knows what it takes. He's the reigning champion right now. So to see him in the Final Four doesn't surprise me at all, Kevin.
No, it doesn't me either. I mean, we knew it was basically a must-win for Ryan Blaney. He really didn't have a point your way in, scenario. We just knew it was going to be too close with Christopher Bell, with William Byron, which we'll get into here in just a bit. So it really was, battle between him and Chase Elliott. And look, Chase ran a fantastic race. He led 129 laps, started second. He was lights out fast. Chase did everything he could, to put himself in position to get to Phoenix. The 12 was just a little bit better on the long run. It was just a little bit better at getting through traffic, and we saw it, like I said, when he got out of that race car, he was spent, just completely done. And, obviously his dad, Dave Blaney, was there, and his fiance, and, obviously everyone could just feel the excitement again in the stands. I look, Jeff, I feel like he's the favorite going into Phoenix again.
I love it. I really do. It was a really interesting situation because we knew that Chase Elliott was in a must-win. Ryan Blaney was in a must-win. Danny Hamlin, he was kind of on the fence until we figured out he had to start at the very back. So Kyle Larson being 7 points under and William Byron being 7 points to the positive, we were like, okay, hey, they got a chance. And then, of course, Christopher Bell is 29 points in the positive. So we're like, yeah, he's probably pretty much dialed. But wait, what a controversy ending that was, Kevin.
Yeah, and there's, obviously it's Monday. We don't have all the information from NASCAR yet, but for the folks that did, catch the end of that race, I mean, we all saw the same thing. I mean, 24 was one spot away. I mean, you had Austin Dillon, you had Ross Chastain charging heavy, and those guys, 24 was backing up. The 3, the 1, the 6, they were coming, couldn't get around them. Was that a Chevy order? Was it just that Byron was able to block those lanes? We're going to know more. And obviously we saw what happened with Christopher Bell. I mean, drove it in deep, had to get around the 23, need that position. And once he got in those marbles, Jeff, got up in the fence, no doubt. I mean, look, you don't need SMT data. You can see it on the onboard. He was mashing the gas through turns 3 and 4. It looked just like Chastain, with the exception of, Chastain had it wide open going down the backstretch, came through 3 and 4 wide open. But once that 20 was right up against the fence, he rode it. I think NASCAR made the right call there, and withdrew four positions from him. I think it was ultimately locking in the 24.
The way I look at it, we're going to see some penalties probably come up, and there's going to be a lot of chatter about what you just mentioned as far as, the 1 and the 3 car kind of holding up the field to keep the 24 ahead with all the Chevys. Bubba Wallace supposedly had a tire going down, so he decided to slow down, which gave Christopher Bell, a little extra few spots. But what it comes down to, in my opinion, and I think NASCAR did a really good job, and they made the right decision. Coming into turn 3, yeah, Christopher Bell, he did come up high and he caught that wall. And as we know, that wall does hold on to you. It kind of grips you a little bit. But when you heard him throttle it from turn 3 through 4 and almost all the way to the start finish line, that looked a lot like what Chastain did, last year. And we know that is not allowed, safety hazard. I think they made the right call on what they did because, I really wanted to see Christopher Bell go in. I did. I think he's a great guy. The 20 had a kick-ass year all year long, but he throttled into the wall. And if he wouldn't have done that, the penalty probably wouldn't have been called and he might have gone in. Who knows, Kevin?
Yeah, there's a lot of what-if scenarios, right? I mean, things play out so quick. at Martinsville with the laps. We're running sometimes 18, 19-second lap times, which is, incredibly quick. I mean, you're just cranking through them. So it's so hard to know where you're at, to get that information from the spotter back to the crew chief. Where are we at? Where's the points? What's the 24 doing? And that's exactly why Chastain in 2022, they said, look, man, we need 4 spots. And he's like, well, here we go. The hell, I'm going to hold it wide open and get all we can get. I don't have a problem with the move that Christopher Bell did, right? Personally, I don't have a problem with it, but I also look at the NASCAR rule book. They banned it going into 23, no wall rides. And we're specifically to Martinsville. There's not a lot of other racetracks that I can think of where a wall ride like that would actually advance your position. In fact, most tracks, it would scrub speed off and hurt you. So NASCAR says, look, you can't do it. You can't ride the crossover gates coming off 4. He obviously did that. And, Seabell did everything he could, man. He was trying to get that last point. That was his only shot. Either that or it was just ride around and finish, tied or 1 point below, and say we're done with it. So Seabell, as a driver, he did what he thought he needed to do to get in. NASCAR made the right call. Now we turn our attention, though, what are they going to do about, the radio communications and this SMT data showing maybe these guys were, holding up, not trying to get around the 24. I mean, the 100% rule, Jeff, that they put in place after Richmond many, many moons ago, I feel like that's kind of gone out the window. They don't really enforce that as much. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets penalized and does that impact anything going into Phoenix.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was September 7th of 2013 at Richmond when that incident happened, with Clint Boyer with the bee that got him, or the bug that got him on the arm, where he spun himself out and, got his teammate in. And Jeff Gordon, unfortunately, didn't make the cutoff in what back then was called the chase. And after reviewing everything, they allowed him back in. And I agree with you. We're not going to see anything like that. I think we're going to see some penalties probably handed down. But at this point of the season, it's almost like, yeah, I'm sure there's going to be some monetary issues, but what are you going to do? Suspend a couple of crew chiefs or something for Phoenix? If they're not in the final 4, so what does it care if Ross Chastain in the 1 car, or Austin Dillon in the 3, or Bubba Wallace even in the 23 car for Toyota? These 3 guys, if they did make any sort of manipulation to the outcome of the race, what's going to become of it? I don't think anything's going to become of it.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, slap on the wrist, maybe here's a fine, something that just states you can't do that, right? The point would be to send a message. I can't recall a time where penalties have carried over to the next season. Like, oh, what you did, in the playoffs last year is now going to affect you in Daytona. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I haven't really deep dive into where is Chevy, what can they do? They throw it at Chevy and say, we're going to pull, manufacturers points and say Chevy can't win the manufacturers championship now. So there's a lot of things on the table here that they're going to have to get ironed out.
There is. And, again, when it comes down to the SMT data, I was listening to a little bit of Bob Pockris kind of talk about it. And, they said they tore, Bubba Wallace's down, and he said he's expecting penalties to come in on Wallace, at least for the team itself, because nothing was broken, nothing was wrong whatsoever. He did say it was hard to predict the Dillon Chastain incident because there was no really lost spots. So, there isn't a blocking rule. In NASCAR, there is not a blocking rule. So, if you're blocking someone, you give them the old Ryan Newman, for those who remember some of the old famous sayings, you give them that old chrome horn, you put that bumper into the back of their ass and you push them out of the way. That didn't happen between, Dillon and Chastain. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. And like you said, there's going to be some penalties, I think, but as far as anything happening towards the next year, absolutely not. So all we know is we know who the final 4 is. We got 2 Penske drivers. We got William Byron in the 24 car and 23XI in the 45 car, Kevin. But one of the things that I was kind of laughing about a little bit when I was watching the end of the race, I was like, man, just, a couple weeks ago, Rick Hendrick had all 4 drivers in there until they disqualified Alex Bowman. Now we're sitting there with no Hendrick drivers in the final 4 until a half hour after the race, when they deemed that Christopher Bell did violate the rules, switched him out, and put the 24 back in. So a very interesting year for, let's say, the cutoff races and the playoffs themselves, about who's in, who's out, what happened, and why. I've never seen anything quite like this, Kevin.
No, I mean, like we mentioned, there's really only other handful of examples. Well, you mentioned Richmond. I think of a time back in Phoenix when Phoenix was the cutoff to go to Homestead. That's back when Ryan Newman, if you remember, Jeff, put Kyle Larson in the wall hard off of turn 4 because he needed that one position to transfer to Homestead. So that's just kind of a result of desperado mode, right? You need one more spot, go get it. And I think that's also going to play into this whole Bubba Wallace thing, right? Because even if Bubba was backing up to let the 20 go, the 20 still just flat out drove into the wall in turn 3, right? I mean, if Bubba was sandbagging, the 20 should have been able to just cruise on by, never even should have gotten into the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we know, Bubba Wallace's teammate, the 45, he didn't have anything to gain for it. He was already in. And I think by then he's already out of the race anyway. So, like I said, nothing's going to change as far as the final 4 goes. One of the things that did kind of like astonish me during this race, a couple of things that really caught me, Kevin. First of all, was how well Denny Hamlin actually did. At first they said he was going to go to a backup car, and then they're like, nope, went through specs, everything looked fine. And you and I kind of talked about this and alluded to, at a track like this, there's not really much as far as aerodynamics go. So why not race it? And then while listening to the race yesterday, come to find out, they didn't have an extra backup car at the track. They were so close to, where their shops are, their offices are, but for some reason they didn't even bring a backup car. Luckily it didn't come into play, but to see Denny Hamlin come from where he did at the back of the field and be able to finish in the top 5, getting a P5 out of this, I mean, he busted his ass. He did a damn good job, everything he could do to try to get in. I had him in my final 4. I know you had him in your final 4, but it just wasn't in the cards for Denny Hamlin this year, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, and I'm bummed for him, of course. I picked him in January to win the championship, came close, ran a hell of a race, Jeff. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, he hung the throttle in practice, backed it into the fence. They were able to kind of put it back together, gets out there, starts 37th, works his way up. Once he got to the top 5, that was pretty much it. I mean, and look, I'm looking at Toyota Racing as a whole manufacturer in this race, Jeff. Toyota just did not perform. I mean, Denny was the best finishing Toyota in 5th. The next closest was Bubba Wallace in 18th, which we just talked about. Eric Jones in 19th. Martin Truex Jr., he kind of shot himself in the foot with that speeding penalty, 24th. John Hunter Nemechek 31st, Ty Gibbs 32nd, and Tyler Reddick 34th. So the deal is Toyota just does not run well at Martinsville. It has been a Ford and Chevy playground in this next gen car.
It really has. And Denny Hamlin, even once he did get up to the P5 position and was kind of flirting in and out, he just didn't have anything additional to get past P5. Again, really unfortunate for Denny. He's getting towards the end of his career, obviously. Really tough to see someone that has his much talent, that has been in the sport this long, not have a championship. And then what I was going to allude to a minute ago, like you just mentioned, Martin Truex Jr., Kevin, he gets the pole. He ran really well. And then he got that speeding penalty, and then everything turned to shit for the 19 car, Martin Truex Jr. And I was actually really pulling for him on this race. I really wanted to see him get a win, being his last season, 2 races left. Now he's only got one more shot. So we'll have to see what happens, in Phoenix with the old Truex.
Yeah, and I just don't see it happening with the pressure from the Final Four. We know guys like Ross Chastain can win there. We know Christopher Bell can win there. He won there in the spring. If we end up in a scenario like last year where the champion didn't actually win the race as well. So, unfortunately for Martin, I think that was his last legitimate shot. Led 41 laps. Once he had that speeding penalty, though, Jeff, I knew it was pretty much his goose was cooked. I mean, it is incredibly difficult to overcome track position. The way Denny Hamlin did it methodically and the way the cautions fell definitely worked in his favor. But kind of a bittersweet ending for Truex. We know that he's still working a deal out with 23XI to run the Daytona 500. So we will still see him in the sport, but not full time. So, Truex, it's just been a rough year.
It was, Kevin. And like I said, I had such a hard time with it because he led 41 laps during the race. I mean, the only people that led more laps than Martin Truex is William Byron, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and Brad Keselowski. And you look at Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, look where they finished, P1, P2. Definitely wasn't enough to get them above that cutoff line, and make it to the final 4. So yeah, again, I felt bad for old Truex. I really wanted to see him get a win. Kyle Busch, I don't think he's going to get a win this year either. It's just not in the cards, Kevin.
No, unfortunately. And, you mentioned Kyle Larson. I mean, incredible season as always. We know how good he is. We know he can win anywhere. Just tough. It's just a tough break the way the points fell this year. With Ryan Blaney winning, it only left one spot to transfer in on points. And we know that was the battleground between Seabell and William Byron. So, I mean, Hendrick Motorsports has one representation for a championship. Those guys are going to give everything they have. And, we'll see. I mean, do we see a situation in Phoenix like we saw in Martinsville? It does someone, for Team Penske or for Hendrick Motorsports, are they going to hold up a guy? Are they going to sandbag? How much is NASCAR going to enforce that? It's going to get interesting.
Yeah, and let's talk about the old Kyle Larson here, man. I mean, he won 6 races this year. Seeing him come up short and not make it to the final 4 really just was disappointing in my eyes. And I like all the different teams, equally. I'm not saying I've got one favorite or another. I've got favorite drivers, but I've got favorite drivers from different organizations. But as far as Kyle Larson winning 6 races, you look back and go, okay, the Indianapolis and the Coca-Cola, 600, did that have any impact? Obviously, he didn't get any driver points at all from that because he wasn't able to even run a single lap, obviously, because of the rain. It's hard to say what really affected, what was the cause that he could not make it, other than the last few races he has, unfortunately had really shitty luck.
Well, yeah, that's just it, right? I mean, obviously the Roval worked in his favor. Las Vegas, he finishes 11th. Homestead, he runs 13th, and 3rd at Martinsville. Looking at that on paper, you go, I mean, 13th with his worst finishing position in the round of 8. He still didn't make it to the final 4. It just shows you how tight the competition is, how tight the points get when there's only 4 spots and you're crunching the numbers with 3 locked in on wins, and you got 3 guys battling on points. It's just without a must-win situation or without winning the race, you're just flat out not going to make it to Phoenix.
No, you're not. And it was really interesting because I was looking at the playoff drivers and where they actually finished in Martinsville. So to see, Ryan Blaney obviously getting P1, Chase Elliott getting P2, Larson P3, Danny Hamlin P5, William Byron P6, Joey Logano P10. I mean, that's amazing. Unfortunately, like I said, Christopher Bell in a P18 and Tyler Reddick in a P34. But as many drivers that finished in the top 10, it kind of reminded me of the last week or so. But it is such a tight battle with this system that we have, and I like it. Hey, as long as everybody's playing by the same rules, that's what you play by. So it's fair. But it is kind of, I don't know. I thought it was a bummer to not see Kyle Larson get in there with as many wins as he has, Kevin.
Well, just exactly. I mean, we were saying all playoffs long, oh, it's a no-brainer. Larson's going to Phoenix, and that proved to not be true. I mean, did he have his opportunities? He did. We know he can win pretty much anywhere. I mean, I thought Homestead was going to be an opportunity for him, but it wasn't. We saw what Tyler Reddick did there. And, it's so, at this point in the season, it's so easy to go, oh, if I just did this race, or if, we didn't have the tire go down there, or, whatever, the what ifs start to play in. Joey Logano mentioned it with the Richmond finish on Austin Dillon. There's just always going to be those asterisks there. Everybody knows the system coming into the round of 8. No one's safe, right? That's the thing. You can come into the playoffs, regular season champion and all stacked up points, and you get to the round of 8, you have a DNF, and all of a sudden, you're in a must win. That's basically what it is. And it's been proven true year after year after year. We talked about it coming into the round of 8. Nobody has overcome a negative 21 deficit in the round of 8. Martin Truex Jr. did it a few years back. No one's been able to do it since. So history repeats itself. It's a win and you're in.
And that's the only way it's going to happen, I think, when it comes down to this cutoff race, even going forward. The only driver that made it that I had in my final 4 was William Byron. I also had Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, and Christopher Bell. Those are the other 3 drivers I had going to the final 4. So kind of blew my mind when William Byron, who is a damn good driver, we know he is, and he's got a really good shot of winning this thing. He was almost my weakest link out of the 4 drivers, in my opinion, going into the round of 4 in Phoenix. And obviously I was proven wrong because there he is.
He's in. Yeah, he's in. He almost wasn't, but he's in.
He almost wasn't till he was.
And you could just see, the stress on those guys. You could just see that they're worn out, man. They've put everything they've got into this championship. And when they, put the camera and the mic back in Byron's face, like, hey man, you're in. He's like, I don't know what to say. It was, it's been just so up and down roller coaster year. And he'll have Monday to reflect, team meetings today. These guys are going to regroup, right? HMS needs to be all hands on deck, right? All their resources, the best of the best, have to be put into that 24 car. And I'm sure Jeff Gordon, Chad Canellis are going to rally these guys. It's a lot of pressure on Byron for sure, but control what you can control. These guys have got to get out there this weekend. They got to get a good starting position. They know what they're up against, Jeff. This is what makes or breaks champions. And that's why I just feel like, no disrespect to Byron, but I just feel like, Blaney's been here. He knows what he needs to do. Joey Logano, he's been here. He knows what he needs to do. I just feel like Team Penske has a little bit of an advantage, and we'll see what Tyler Reddick's made of.
Yeah, and you're right about Hendrick Motorsports. They're going to put their best resources from all 4 teams into William Byron's team. No, hands down, no doubt about it, 100% for sure. But I think you're right. I think the 12 car is the favorite right now. He's my favorite. I think he's going to win this thing again. He's got the experience. Penske's obviously doing very well with him and Joey Logano in there. So, it's going to be a good race in Phoenix. I can't wait. But, again, in my eyes, I think the 12 car is probably my favorite. Next to that, I don't know. It's going to be a tough call. I mean, maybe William Byron.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, obviously the most recent thing we have to go off of is when we raced in Phoenix earlier this year, which Christopher Bell led 50 laps and won the race. Chris Buescher ran second, Ty Gibbs, Brad Keselowski, and Ryan Blaney. So out of our final 4, the best finishing driver in the spring was Ryan Blaney. You go back 1 year ago, we know Ross Chastain won the race leading 157 laps. Ryan Blaney ran second, won the championship. So, just looking at the numbers here, Jeff, it shows that Blaney, I feel like, has the best odds.
He does, and William Byron, he came in P4 last year in Phoenix for the championship. So it's going to be a very great race. We had everything lined up. Didn't work out for us this year to be there, unfortunately, but we'll probably be there again next year. It's the first year that we have missed it in quite a while. But Phoenix can be a fun race. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm bummed that we're not going this year for Mash the Gas. We obviously had, tremendous years there in the past, hanging out with Steve Phelps and just building some rapport down there. So we'll certainly be back there next year with some changes coming to the program that we'll announce in the offseason. Looking forward to that. But, the race must go on, Jeff. And we got 3 championships, well, 4 if you count the ARCA Menard Series, to decide this weekend. And it all starts Friday night. We got the Craftsman Truck Series going in there. Going to be a good battle, I feel like. Look, it's been a great season for those guys all season long. I mean, for the truck races that I've watched, it's Grant Enfinger, Christian Eckes, Ty Majeski, and Corey Heim battling this thing out. It's tough for me to say who I feel like is the favorite over there. I feel like Ty Majeski just doesn't have good luck on his side. I'm going to go ahead and call it, Jeff. I think Grant Enfinger wins this Truck Series championship Friday night.
He very well could. He's been running great this whole season. The Truck Series, I didn't follow it quite as much as I have in the past, but yeah, Grant Enfinger, he's a solid driver. So
yeah, he is.
That's going to be cool. And the Xfinity Series, I can't wait for the Xfinity Series, Kevin.
What a battle here. I mean, I think a lot of people, from the fans' perspective, I talked to my dad. He's pulling 100% for the 7 of Justin Allgaier, Junior Motorsports. Those guys have a good shot. But I'll be honest, I got to pull for AJ Allmendinger here, man. The Dinger, the road course ringer, he's always been known as. We know what he went through in the Cup Series many moons ago. He worked hard to get back here. He's fired up. He had a terrible race at Martinsville. I think the Dinger has a lot of momentum. I think he can do this, but it's tough competition. Look, Austin Hill with RCR, Cole Custer for Stewart Haas. Cole Custer won this race a year ago, won the championship for Stewart Haas Racing. Another chance for SHR to get that thing before they close it down. So it's going to be a tight battle on the Xfinity side, Jeff.
Yeah, the Xfinity Series is going to be a really tight battle, and I think I'm with your dad. Actually, I think I'm going to go for the 7. I think Junior Motorsports right now has what it takes to get in there, and I think they're going to win this thing. As much as I do love AJ Allmendinger, he's been around forever. Like you said, we've seen what he went through. Being in the Cup Series, dropping back down, kicking ass in the Xfinity Series, coming back up. I mean, his career has just had so many ups and downs. But I think it would be super cool to see him actually win the Xfinity Series. I think it'd be great for him, or the number 7. I mean, Justin Allgaier, he's been in there a long time as well. So to see either one of those two, I think I'd give it a thumbs up with either guy.
Yeah, I mean, again, just crunching numbers and looking at it, I think Cole Custer, just based on performance, being that he's in the Final Four again, won it a year ago. I think the numbers are going to kind of tip in his favor. Austin Hill, we'll kind of see what he's made of. He ran 21st there last year, Jeff, in the Xfinity Championship. Justin Allgaier bringing it home in P7. So, it's hard to say what those guys did last year is really going to affect them this year, but there is some carryover there, right? I mean, we know they can bring fast race cars to Phoenix. It's, the unique 1 mile racetrack. We don't really have. We got New Hampshire, right? We've got Dover. We have 1 mile racetracks, but none of them are quite shaped like Phoenix. Got that unique dog leg. They switched it, right? It used to be the front straightaway, is now the back straightaway. I like what Phoenix has done. We've been going there for years now. It's fantastic. I did see there's still single tickets left. This race is usually sold out by now, but if folks are catching this and you're in the Phoenix area, I highly recommend going to really any three of these, right, Jeff? We've been to the Truck Championship, the Xfinity Championship, Cup. The energy, the excitement, the weather is absolutely perfect in Phoenix this time of year. I just think it's a great city to host this championship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Phoenix, it's got a great track, like you mentioned. It's different than any of the other tracks that we pretty much run. It's just so fun. I love the atmosphere, man. When you land and you get there in the airport and you see all those NASCAR signs for the championship, you just get a good vibe. You get a really good feeling, and it's fun, man. There's a really good energy in Phoenix. So great place to have it. We're going to see what happens over the next few years if they're going to wind up moving it around. I mean, if they do go back to Miami Homestead, I mean, hell, it's been there for like 14 years. Why not spread it around to a few other tracks? But obviously, we only have a few tracks that we can actually run in November, so it's kind of hard to say what they would do. Vegas maybe in the mix, but I like having it in Phoenix.
I'm fine with it. We talk about how much we love mile and a half racing, and that's why it would maybe play back into a Homestead or a Las Vegas, even a Texas, Jeff. I mean, you're in Texas. Your weather this time of year is raceable. I mean, I think Texas could be in play. I just don't know if they're going to go to Texas based on the ticket sales, but when you announce a championship, I mean, that completely changed the game in Phoenix. Phoenix always did pretty well. I went to a lot of races there well before that was a championship race. The crowd was always pretty strong. I mean, you're 5 hours from LA, 5 million people in the Valley. It's a huge market for it. But we've talked about this with DFW, almost 8 million in that area. And they struggle. They're struggling to sell out TMS. But they brought the All-Star race there. I didn't think that was a complete failure. I'm open with trying some things and moving the championship to a mile and a half. I don't think it has to specifically be a short track. Like, I don't see Martinsville hosting the championship, and I don't know that Martinsville should.
Yeah, I mean, Texas actually has had some really good racing over the last 5-6 years, and I think it's just got kind of a bad rap, for people that haven't been watching it for 15 plus years, like us. Texas, what used to be kind of a conveyor belt, and then, they did some reconfigurations with the banking, with the track, with the surface, and it did a lot. It did a lot of things that made the racing so much better. But I think Texas still gets a really bad rap for that. And I'm not quite sure why, because let's take a look at Homestead, Miami. Man, what an awesome race last week, but what a shitty attendance, man. I mean, we had more people at Martinsville than we did at Homestead, and those stands, they were packed this week. Back in when we were watching, Miami Homestead, looked like maybe half the stands were full. It was weird.
Yeah, we touched on that last week, and I haven't heard enough about it kind of in the mainstream NASCAR world. A track that only has 46,000 grandstand, I'm not including infield or camper space, 46,000 grandstand seats, was barely at 55% capacity. That's just over 25,000. You get that at Madison Square Garden for a hockey game. I mean, those numbers are just not going to cut it, right? But go back to Vegas the week before. I thought Vegas's attendance was absolutely terrible as well. Now Vegas holds closer to 90,000, but still, attendance is going to play into this thing. Phoenix has done well with it. And I think if they were to shift it to another market or another track, they would have enough time to advertise for it, build it up a bit, just like they did in Phoenix. So I do think it's possible, but obviously we know in 25, Jeff, we know where we're going. We know where it's ending. As far as, we're concerned, we will be in Homestead, Miami. I think we can announce that. We're going to be down there. I think that's going to be the first race that we have boots on the ground for, with some other surprises coming down the pipeline. I'm looking forward to it. Let's get down there and see what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always wanted to get down there. There's a lot of fun things to do out there in the Miami area. That's one track I haven't been to yet. And then, as you and I love going to different tracks, I think that's definitely a good one to start out for the year next year, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. The weather should be good. They're obviously flexing that race out of the playoffs into the earlier part of the year. So, we'll see. And that'll be really our first crack in 2025 at a mile and a half, right? Like I mentioned last week, we won't see it again until then. So excluding Atlanta, because we have to put an asterisk next to Atlanta. It's a mile and a half, but it isn't, right? It's a super speedway. It drives like that. So, I'm okay with the 2025 schedule. I like it better than the 2024 schedule. There's a couple new things coming, right? We talked about Mexico being added in, shifting some races back into the playoffs. New Hampshire, I'm really excited. I'll be there for that race next year. So obviously, we're getting excited talking 2025. We got a championship to go win this weekend, Jeff.
Yeah, we got a race to win this weekend. I mean, let's not focus on next year too much. I mean, I know we love it, and there's some schedule changes which are better. I still think there's a lot that needs to be changed with next year's schedule. But yeah, man, we've got a championship coming up this coming weekend, man. I mean, we got Tyler Reddick with 3 wins, Byron with 3 wins. Joey Logano, 2-time Cup champion, the reigning champion of Ryan Blaney. I mean, man, this is just going to be an insane race this weekend, Kevin.
We'll see who can handle the pressure. They say diamonds are made under pressure, and this stuff it's exhausting. You can feel it, you can see it on these guys. The pressure is going to be on big time, and there's so many variables. We don't know what NASCAR is going to do yet with penalties. Don't think we're just going to change the Final Four. And the field is set. We know what we're racing for this weekend in the desert. It should be great, right? 312 laps around there. Pretty quick race when you think about it. I mean, we're used to 400, 500-mile races. This is not a long race. You don't have a lot of opportunity to overcome situations. We saw Chase Elliott do it in 2020. Started at the back, came through the field, won the championship. Kyle Larson overcame adversity in 2021, wins it. Joey Logano in 22. Ryan Blaney gets it done last year. Who you got, Jeff? Who is going to win this thing?
Man, I'm telling you, I'm wearing my number 12 hat all week long. I've got a lot of different hats with a lot of different numbers, Kevin. But, yep, I'm going to be wearing my number 12 Ryan Blaney hat the rest of the week, Kevin.
I'm with you.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I just think based on everything we've analyzed here and given the circumstances, Ryan Blaney can get it done. He knows how to do it. I think, bearing a speeding penalty, getting caught up in a wreck, mechanical failure, if those come into play, I think next man up has got to be Joey Logano.
Man, okay, that's where I've got kind of a toss-up. This one's so hard for me to choose between Logano, William Byron, and Tyler Reddick. I mean, all 3 of them are so good. They've all got multiple wins. It's going to be really tough. I mean, with 2 Penske cars in there, maybe Logano does have a little bit of the edge. But if you got someone like the 24 car and you got all of Hendrick behind you and whatever changes they need to make, they've got a lot of employees and a lot of data that they can really help that 24 car out. So I'm kind of at a toss up. If it's not for Ryan Blaney, I don't know if it's going to be Logano Byron for some reason. I just don't have Tyler Reddick in my cards, Kevin.
Well, I don't either, unless he really can surprise us here. We've seen Tyler Reddick overcome some amazing things, win races that I didn't think he would. And 23XI, I mean, 3.5 years in, they're in the championship. They've accomplished their goals. It's a great organization.
Incredible.
So, we've got representation from all 3 manufacturers. It's going to be a battle for sure. It's going to come right down to the wire. It could come down to an overtime restart, Jeff. We just don't know which way this thing's going to go. But the weather looks fantastic. We're ready to rock and roll. For all the folks out there sitting on Rattlesnake Hill, whatever, it's just going to be a great weekend. The weather looks absolutely phenomenal for Championship Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Jeff, we'll be back next week. NASCAR Sky going to be joining us, of course. She's been on the program a couple times this year. She's going to close out the year with us. Looking forward to that. We'll break down all of our championship action next Monday night. You got anything for the listeners, Jeff?
Next week, Kevin, they all have to mash the gas.
All right, y'all. Let's go. Phoenix, NASCAR Championship. It's time.
Mash it.